I'm a public art officer for Milton Keynes. That's kind of got different parts to my role. One part is looking after and helping other people look after the collection of public art that Milton Keynes has got, and the other part is commissioning new work. Okay, so Milton Keynes has got over 230. I don't even know for sure how many pieces of public art we've got, and it ranges from sculptures and paintings to lightworks and a vast range of things that we've got now, and we're expanding the repertoire of what we've got all the time. I'm going to give you now a very brief, kind of abridged history, if I can, of the commissioning that Milton Keynes has done over the last 30 years. So although Milton Keynes is 40 years, really the collection starts in the sort of 70s as to when they started collecting. Okay, love them, hate them. They are Marmite. Some people think they're great, other people don't. But they are an important part of the story of Milton Keynes. They were in the early days of the Development Corporation putting artists into communities. So artists came along, spent time with the community and made things with that community. So they were really always meant to be temporary, but they've become permanent. The people that love them have taken them to heart, and as you can see, they're often reinterpreted. You know, all sorts of things have happened to those cows over the years. And actually the ones that are in the field now are the fakes. So the real ones are actually in the shopping centre, because being concrete, they just didn't really survive. The weather gets to them and bits pop off. So we have quite a collection of these. We've got toadstools and tin men and all sorts of things, but they were very much about artists in communities. Another phase was artists who came and did residencies in the city. So invited to come, spend time here, and then produce work in response to the city. This is a very well-known painting for anybody that lives or works in Milton Keynes. It's in our library. It's a massive painting. And it's actually a time capsule of Milton Keynes in its development. There's lots of references in there. There's even Neil Kinnock and Margaret Thatcher somewhere in there. So it really is dated by the content of it. But it was a definite capture of the kind of vision of Milton Keynes. There are other artists who also did this kind of work, but they, as opposed to the first one where they were working with the community, these artists were producing their own work in response to the city. Right, another phase, a different kind of approach, but a very traditional approach was to purchase sculptures. And so we have a large collection, predominantly in the city centre area itself, of bronzes and other sculptures where they were purchased and then sited. And often very well thought out siting. And the Black Horse is outside Lloyd's Bank, and the Whisper is outside the library in the city centre. So they're actually not badly sited, they're not just plonked, but they are purchased. So the community didn't really have much say in these pieces. Another phase. So you can see we've kind of gone with the traditions of commissioning over the 30 years, but this is where artists are invited to integrate artworks within buildings. So the theatre just next door, which you potentially can pop into, has a collection, and they invited a lead artist who then proposed a series of artists to commission work that's all around, including the theatre curtain is an artwork. And the other piece is in one of the shopping centres over the road, a big glass window. The theatre ones, I think there was very little engagement probably with the community. The glass window does have some engagement with the community, and there's references to the lace industry and things that are from around this area. Okay, so where are we now? Because that was sort of 2000, and where are we now and what are we doing? We're still commissioning. So most of our work comes from planning gain. So when there's new developments, developers give us some money and we spend that on some public art. But in 2006, when I came into post, there was a need to write some sort of strategy. What are we going to do? How are we going to commission new work? And we commissioned, first of all, a piece of work to tell us whether the people of Milton Keynes want public art. Because there's no point in commissioning public art unless actually there's an appetite for it. You know, we're just kind of putting things on people's doorsteps. So they found that actually people do want it. It's well loved. People think it shows some pride in their place, that it gives an indication that places are well designed. It can sort of give them some identity. And actually we've become quite accustomed in Milton Keynes to seeing artwork in the public realm because we've always had it. It's become something we expect to see. So that has kind of informed where we go now with our public art commissioning, because the feedback was we want to engage with it, we want to interact with it, we want to be involved in the process, we want to be part of it, and we want it to say something about us and Milton Keynes. So what I'm going to do next is show you a project that's current, that is still going. It's a long-term project, and kind of demonstrate some of our approach. So, to start with, this is the statement we have in our strategy. This is what we say to anybody that is thinking about commissioning public art. It's a very useful line that I have when developers come and say, well, I was just going to nip down to the garden centre and buy a nice sort of, garden ornament. And I think, well, we don't do that here. So it's about inviting the vision, creativity and skills of artists. That's very important to us. Engage people with place in a well-considered way. So that's not just thinking about site-specific, it's also thinking about the people who are going to engage with it. So it's thinking about the future of that piece and actually doing it in a considered way. How's it going to be managed? And I know that some people earlier said things about, we worry about who's going to look after it, how's it going to be maintained, the revenue costs and that, but we have to. Because when we're commissioning work, we have to think what will happen to it in the long term, because, time moves on and we do have to think, if it's a temporary piece, we need to know it's temporary and that we then can move on and remove it if that's what we need to do. Because in Milton Keynes we have a lot of work, like those cows and dinosaurs, that were never ever meant to be permanent, but now that they're cherished, we're kind of like got an obligation to look after them, and they are quite an obligation to look after. So this is an image of Walter Jack, whose project I'm going to talk about, and he's working on what we call the Eastern Expansion Area. It's basically 2 new housing developments, thousands of houses on the east of Milton Keynes, edging out towards the motorway. And there was nothing there, and now there's probably maybe a third of the development built. So it really is a new community. So he was invited as our lead artist, and we asked him to come in and go out, explore, talk to people, find out what he could about the area, and then come back to us with some sort of idea of what we might commission. And he came back with a concept that none of us imagined when we set out commissioning him. So we expected to get back, you should, as with the theatre, you should commission so-and-so to do X and so to do Y, and then when you reach this part of the development, you could do A, B, and C. We didn't get that. We got a plan that's called Pass the Parcel. It's a long-term plan. It's about an artwork that is transforming from one form to another over basically about a 6, maybe 8-year period. So it's going to have 4 locations. It will be temporary in each location, and then it will leave behind a permanent gift, just in the concept of pass the parcel. You pass the parcel on, and you retain your small treat from inside. So it is, as that says, a mile or so of oak. It's 640 beams of oak. And so this is a long-term plan. This is like something where people can engage along the journey, and they've already engaging. We've kind of already got to a point in this, and we've had to go through all the bureaucracy that other people have talked about, lots and lots of it, getting the money released and, planning permission and all those things, but they're just hurdles that we're kind of jumping through. So we have started the journey. We commissioned Walter in 2009. The first temporary artwork went in November 2012. So that's how long it took us to get through all the design process and the thinking about how it's all going to operate, and landowner permission and all of that. As you can see, lots of oak. This is it in the school grounds. It's called Cathedral. It's temporary, and it's obviously all the oak is in an upright position, and the children actually can run through it. It's got a tunnel that runs through the middle of it, and there are some skylights so that they've actually got light coming through so that they can see and don't bump their head all the time. But it does get low at points to get them challenged to run through it. Pass the Parcel is also about having some sort of bringing people together, having a sense of community, doing things that perhaps you wouldn't imagine. You know, you're not just satelliting in and popping an artwork down. This is about events and artists in residences that can go alongside all of this. So this is the school's first piece. The school is very important to Walter. It's the place where the pioneers, the sort of saplings, as it were, of that new community start out. And it's the first civic building in that development. The school is there, and at the moment, there aren't many houses around it. It's, you know, the houses are kind of gradually coming towards it. So it's actually a focal point. And last year, when the artwork had gone in, the first event happened, and the school used it as part of their Lantern Festival, which is for the whole community to come to animate it. And so people were invited to kind of come and see the artwork and celebrate it with them. The artwork is there for about a year, during which time we need to design with the school the permanent piece that they're going to be gifted, which they've started on. It's loosely termed Theatre for Learning. It's a movable piece, and it's going to have artist residencies attached to it, which are about embedding the artwork within some of the subject matter that they're doing at school, so that it becomes a sort of teaching tool and has a resource that goes with it. So we're kind of there at this point. We've got a long way to go. We think it's probably 2018 before we can pass the parcel and unwrap the final gift in its resting place, which is going to be the sort of civic square, the retail part of the development. So we're quite a few years off actually being there, and that's dependent. Our timescale is dependent on the build timescale. So, you know, if the housing market takes another downturn, we'll probably be longer before we get to where we want. So we've got lots of logistics to sort out. These are some of just the early concepts, because we don't know what's right for each location quite yet. The early research has given these to us as sort of concept ideas, but until we actually can get properly engaged with the community and start doing the events and things that we want to do and the artists in residencies we want to do, we don't really know what's going to be right. Some of the residencies are around, we've got a sort of core group of residents that are helping us write briefs and things, and they are talking about growing projects and feasting projects and kind of community events. And we've got lots of things in place, but we don't know quite which ones we're going to take forward yet. So it's quite an exciting time, and there's a long way to go in its development. But as you can see, it's a long project. And we've been working with the community development team, both in the council. There are some officers, but there's also community action, community mobilisers. They've been helping us as well. So in a way, I kind of think that we've almost come full circle, but we're doing it slightly differently, because we're kind of still putting artists into communities, but instead of artists making work with a community, artists are making work in response to their interactions with that community. So the community are still very much involved, and still very much a pivotal thing in the decisions that are going on about what these artworks are. So we have kind of gone full circle, just we're doing it in a slightly different way. So it's kind of a snapshot of, you know, our commissioning process. It's about artists, it's about people, it's about place in a snapshot. This is my last slide, and that shows you just a few other things that have been commissioned over the last few years. Site-specific and people-specific, some in schools, we've got quite a lot in schools, and some in communities. It gives you a snapshot. We're still actively commissioning.